Hey, welcome back to the Oz Shift podcast. Today's guest is actually a very good man. Like, I enjoyed having this conversation and kind of flowed in ways that the natural ways you want to have a conversation flow. And this person has gone through some interesting things, grew up in Tennessee and kind of like a very rural area, navigated his way through to the military, from the military, kind of progressed into an interesting world of like, we'll call it essentially real estate and be able to get to a point of wealth in his life. But the interesting thing is he gives back, right? I love people who have this great accomplishments, these great skills they've developed, and they go and say, I want to be able to give this back to the world because it's something that I didn't have, I earned, and I want to teach other people how to earn it as well. But a lot of the conversation isn't about that. It's about life. We talk about our kids and the dynamics of how to make somebody a better human, how to be able to, I'd say create hardship that creates adversity, that creates character in time. And so if you're a person that you find in your life, you've been looking for a way to navigate the internal kind of battle to become the best you actually can be, it's a great conversation. Also, if you want to find a way to hear how somebody else is able to create a level of wealth for them and what the intangible traits where they did that, it's going to be a great conversation. So without further ado, let's hop into the show and meet my new friend, Edward Buddy Rushing. Hey everybody, welcome into the show. We're here with Edward Buddy Rushing. I didn't know the Buddy existed until a moment ago. I just noticed it. So hey,
good.
How you doing, Edward?
I'm good. Yeah, and I tried to. So let me just tell you a little bit about that. It has unfortunately become a big part of my identity, and it came from when I'm the youngest of five, and my dad, whenever all the others were at school. We lived in a very rural part of East Tennessee, and so there was no daycare available. So he would take me with him. He worked in the bugwoods, right, logging and stuff like that. And so he would always introduce me as, "Hey, this is my little buddy," and they'd be like, "Hey, buddy," and it was just this thing, right? And so I grew up being known as Buddy. And then whenever I married my wife, she loved it. She loved it way more than Edward. And so when I tried to actually become a professional and like be a grown up and start signing my stuff, Edward, and start talking to him, she was like, "No, absolutely not. You need to." So now we've compromised, and everybody knows me as Buddy, but my actual name is Edward.
Yeah. It's funny. So it's I love those because it's a true nickname. Like it's a genuine. Like my oldest son has a nickname. His middle name is Mac, and so he used to be called Mac Trucks, and it would be Mac Tizzle. We would call him. So like, what's up, Mac Tizzle? Because his name's Anthony Mac Trucks, and so Mac Tizzle was what we called him in college. It was the whole Snoop Dogg fishing my Bizzle, right? And then it went from Mac Tizzle to just Tizzle to now just his Tiz. So if you ever see him, he's just Tiz, and people are like, "Why does he call you Tiz?" And it's his name.
I love it.
Genuine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mac Truck. That is cool, badass.
Well, last thing, my youngest son is Torian Diesel Trucks. My daughter is just, my wife wouldn't let me do anything with her name, which kind of sucks. But I got Mac Trucks and Diesel Trucks as my boys. So
that's fantastic, dude. That is fantastic. I love it. I love your energy, by the way. Right off the bat, I'm just like, yeah, this is gonna be a good time.
Also, be a good time, man. Because I don't have any ulterior motive. I just want to talk to people. This whole podcast was designed in the beginning for me to have a reason to call someone and go, "Hey, can I talk to you?" And that was what it turned into. And then it's kind of blossomed into this 400 episode cool experience of just getting to know great people like yourself. Now I do this. I open the conversation with a question, and this is when everybody who listens knows, but you probably don't. But here's a question. I'm walking around town. I happen to sit down in a coffee shop next to this cool guy. It's you. I don't know you. You don't know me. You overhear a conversation of me saying something, and for some reason, you feel compelled to turn and start talking to me. In your personal opinion, why should I listen to you?
Wow, that is a phenomenal question. I will tell you that I absolutely value connections with people. And when I look at new relationships, whether it's right now, you and I just met, right? Like a few minutes ago, right? And I asked you a question, and you may not have even realized that this is the way that I approach all new relationships. Is I look at it like I look at a fireplace, right? You would never look at a fireplace and say, "Wow, as soon as it starts burning and producing heat, then I'll add firewood." No, you add the fuel first, you add the value first. And so like when I talk to somebody or meet somebody, my number one motive is let me try to find ways to add value. Maybe it's to make them laugh. Maybe it's to help them see something they've never seen before. Maybe it's to introduce them to somebody that can help change their life. Or maybe it's to pray with them. Maybe it's to do whatever, right? Or to relate to them as a man or as a combat veteran or whatever, right? Like finding ways to add value to them so that if we never meet again, their life's a little bit better because of our interaction. That's my only motive. And guess what? When you do that with the right types of people, now there are takers, right? And you bless and release them, right? But when you do it with the right types of people, you do talk again and you do engage again. And your lives are both richer because of it. Sometimes financially, which is awesome. Sometimes emotionally, sometimes experientially. We'll go to a football game together or we'll go to, right? And so I've found so much joy and reward out of trying to add value first. So that's why maybe you should listen.
I like that. That's a great one, man. I know I kind of operate the same. I've told many people many times over my lifetime, I go, my goal is like, if I never meet you again, at least that you thought of me. And when you think of me later, it's like a good conversation. Because there are people I meet at airports that we're in layovers and I'll talk for 2 hours and I'll never see them again in my life. But like, they're like, I really enjoy talking to them. Like, I enjoy talking to you too, right? And all it is you just open the floodgates to have a decent conversation with a human being. And I think that is a limiting factor for a lot of humans. And I think this is, and I don't know if you have this straight, but here's what my trait is. I don't bring judgment to it. I have the ability to entertain an idea without accepting it. And the existence of your opposite belief is not an outright attack on my belief. So I can have a
let's stick into that for a second. What you just talked about is an evolved mindset. That is a higher level, higher order mindset that we're not naturally born with as humans, right? We're naturally born with a scarcity mindset, with a fear mindset. And especially me, I grew up in a very small town in East Tennessee, right? And small town, we grew up in poverty as well. Small town poverty, South, like what I experienced at least was a lot of very fear-based closed mindsets of anybody that's not from our town. And it literally can be the next town over. Anybody that's not from our town, you don't trust them. Don't trust rich people. You don't trust people that are not Americans. You don't, right? All these other, and I had to grow and with self-development, personal development, learn. And joining the military was the greatest thing that ever happened to me because you're put into this just pot of people with all kinds of different backgrounds and all kinds of different worldviews, right? And, it shows you the, not just value, but the necessity of having that mindset, right? And it's I think that's awesome. So good on you, man. And one thing I wanted to say is you seem like an extrovert.
I have a bit of it, a little bit.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to say, and this is important because a lot of people look at someone like you and they say, well, yeah, I mean, obviously it's easy for Tony to do this because look at him. He's naturally gregarious, and, he's a nice, likable guy and, got an impressive background. Of course, everybody wants to talk to you, right? But the fact of the matter is that I actually am not an extrovert. I'm actually an introvert, but and all that means is that your natural tendency is to want to be alone. But I've realized over the years the awesome power of human connection. And so you develop skills and you can learn these things. You can learn ways to be conversational and what happens even with introverts is when you have a great conversation, you still leave fulfilled, right? It just takes you maybe a little bit more to get going. So for all the introverts that are out there that are saying, well, I can't do this, trust me, you got to at least put yourself in those situations and take action because that's the richness of life.
Yeah, I agree, man. And the thing is, I think I'm an extroverted introvert, right? I do hop on stage and I talk and share, but I have to be alone to recharge. Like if I'm around people for too long, not that I'm saying I love people, but I will start to feel it. And this is the thing, I start feeling like it's not of value to the people. Like we did open the conversation going like, I want to be of value in the conversation. And so I'll talk to you and do my thing. But after a while, I feel myself. And in my head, I'm thinking about wanting to leave. And I go, that's so rude to this person. Because they're a human. I don't want them to feel that. So I have to muster up even more energy. But then I'm not going out tonight. I'm going to go sit in my room. And I'll sit there and just stare at the wall and not go to sleep, but just sit in a chair. And probably if you were to walk in, think I'm a crazy person, but I just need to be there. But I also find that happened because I was a foster kid. So I was given away as a kid and at 3 years old and a whole lot of craziness. So I didn't trust people for a long time. And I think that kind of made me go internal. It's where I found peace. It's the only place that I knew I was loved, right? For the most part, after it was inside. So I definitely get what you're saying is there's a part of me that Like, I love you, man. I love doing this. But I also like, I got to
Mhm.
shut down. I can't be around people 24/7. I'm not built
Yeah,
like that.
then you and I are very much alike. That you described it even better than I did. The alternative is my wife, who is, she lights up a room and,
Uh,
and she leaves floating because because that she's had those interactions.
yeah.
So
That's super cool. I have those moments. My wife is definitely not like that. My wife, for example, like I do this, and we have an interesting story of like being divorced, remarried after 3 years, divorced, our 3 kids, and so we've been asked to go like on
yeah,
ABC and NBC for shows, and then like my wife won't do it. She's like,
yeah,
that's not my thing, and I respect that. I think at a certain point, I used to, but it could be good for my career, but I go, if it's good for my career but bad for my marriage,
yeah,
I just don't do it. So now I just want to do it. Cool. If she changes her mind one day, great. But if not, I hold nothing over that. But there is a dynamic where she is just not
yeah.
for this. She's like, that's not what I do. And I love her
Sure.
for it.
Yeah.
It's kind
So
of cool.
my wife. So I speak on stages as well. We have these things called
Yeah.
financial freedom summits for military and veterans. And so we did one recently in Vegas, and I called my wife up to be interviewed, right? And she didn't know that was going to happen. And she tried to run away. She tried to literally physically run out of the room. And one of my friends, a girl named Milena, was like, no, you have to go. And everybody was laughing. And then she got up on stage and poured her heart out, and everyone loved it, right? But yeah, she was
Yeah.
petrified.
Crazy. My wife would be the same. I feel like if my wife, when she gets going, she's good. But I also think she's comparing herself to me. And it does get difficult. Like I'm a very good speaker when I get in there. So I think she's looking like, I can't do what you do. I'm like, I know you can't. I'm not
Mhm,
expecting you to do that. Where you talk to people, right?
mhm.
Let's just do that. And so there's a dance. But you alluded to some of the things you do. And I know we haven't yet dove into the area of work you do. And I do want to do a couple of things. One, I want to know kind of what it is you do, how you show up in the world amazingly. And then I want to find out where that came from. It's kind of, I want to, because along that journey, I'm sure there's going to be those awe shift moments we want to
Yeah.
poke into that'll give us some more clarity on you and what we can give a value to the audience.
Yeah, and I appreciate you asking it like that. I've never really done it like that. I've always told the story first. But so what we do now, so I'm married. We have two little kids, and
Awesome.
I now work for myself. I have a business. It's called White Feather, named after Carlos Hathcock, the Marine sniper. And the business's mission is to help
Okay.
military veterans and their families build financial freedom. And the
Mm.
like we do that full time, and we're part of a larger coalition of people called Veterans for Financial Freedom. And the mission is the same, right? And the
Okay.
whole idea is you have these millions and millions of people who've raised their hand to volunteer to serve to protect the American dream in one fashion or another. But whenever they get out of the military, I don't have to tell you this, right? They face massive challenges, homelessness and drug abuse and suicide. And there's a lot of pain. And there's a lot of reasons for it, but one of the main reasons is that when you're in, it's actually, I talked to Lee Steinberg the other day. I sat down and had a meeting with him, and he was talking, I mean, he's represented, some of the greatest football players, NFL players
Yeah.
For 30, 40 years,
Yeah.
right? So he was saying,
Yeah.
he was saying, listen, buddy, I can draw a lot of parallels to NFL players and to military people whenever they transition out, because you're in an incredibly structured situation. Mostly everything's taken care of for you so you can focus on the task at hand.
Everything.
And you have to be uniquely and utterly dedicated to your task at the sacrifice of everything else in your life, right? In order to be truly great.
Exactly.
And in the NFL, it's about, performing at the highest level and everything like that. In the military, it's about doing your job and trying not to get killed. And so, when you're, especially when you're in a combat situation, everything else fades away. Money, relationships, all of this, it's only about the mission and survival. And so when you, and also like NFL players, the American public applauds military and service members, right? It's like, thank you for your service, and like, here's this, and what can I do for you? And you're a hero, and movies are made about them and all that. As soon as you transition out, the next day, when you drive off base, you lose the uniform, you lose your sense of purpose in life, you lose your sense of structure, you lose the respect and accountability, you lose the income. And most of the skills that you developed, I'm sure you faced this because I know you played the NFL. What skills as an NFL player, when you go and you talk to, other than the interest level of, oh, that's cool, you played in the NFL, you go to Amazon and say, hey, I'd love to work at a distribution center as your manager of operations. Well, I mean, what position did you play? Linebacker. So tell me, as a linebacker, what skills you developed that'll help you run a multi-million-dollar super high-speed wildly complex managerial operation? None.
Yeah.
Same as a Marine, right? It's like, I got nothing, right? And so you transition out, and unfortunately, there's a lot of whiplash that happens, a lot of whiplash, and they're not able to actually live the American dream that they fought to protect, right? And so that's the whole mission, and that's the why behind it. I can tell you that it's been the most fulfilling thing we've done professionally ever.
How'd you fall into this then? Because I know this exists, and my brother's in the military. I've got some great friends that were in the military that some have transitioned well, some not so great. The ones that do well, the ones that have something to do, right, to rebuild. There is a part of it where there are definitely some intangible skills that are dormant for a lot of guys that if they just woke them back up and reapplied them somewhere, they'd be amazing. But you are right. They all of a sudden go, I was on top of the high horse. I fell off. I don't have another horse. How do I get back up? So for you, how did you guide yourself into this? Was it your own experience of this? Was it some close friend? Like, how did you navigate to this?
You know how it happens. Like, you don't, or most of us don't stumble into our why, right? We don't just be like, aha, that's what happens. It's more of an evolutionary process. So like for me, and I guess this is, probably relevant. I told you I grew up in East Tennessee, but we grew up on WIC and food stamps and without electricity and running water. And like, it was basically like, the very rural version of the inner city, right? Like there was just no, dirt roads and all that stuff, and in a trailer. And anyway, so like in growing up with that, there's a lot of things that you see that are very difficult to process as a kid. You see a lot of privation, a lot of lack, a lot of depression, right, and drug abuse and things like that, and abuse, right? You see a lot of those things that happen. And as a kid, you're like, I guess this is life. This is just what life is like. And it's not super awesome, right? I'd like to try to find a way. I see on TV and in movies, people aren't living like this. They're living, like you said, Mayberry, right? Yeah. You're like, you live now, you built a life with your family, and now you live in this amazing, safe, you're not concerned if you walk outside that you're going to get shot or right? You live in America in a place where that exists, but that's not the case for everybody in America, right? And so growing up that way, I had this extreme desire to not continue that legacy, to change the pattern, to do something, right? I didn't know what it was, but to get out of that and to change it for my family. And I fortunately, out of high school, got accepted to the Naval Academy in Maryland. And that was fortunate for me because I couldn't afford college. So if you go to the Naval Academy, they pay for your school in exchange for service. And so I went to the academy, and man, you want to find a place where like superhumans are the norm. Go to one of the service academies. It's unbelievable. I felt so out of place there because like I was from a very small town, and every single person was like a multi-letter athlete and a Rhodes Scholar and a super nice person and an achiever, right? And I remember this one guy. He was, he was in my, I ended up taking aerospace engineering because I guess I wanted to just, suffer as much as possible because it's super hard. But he was in my aerospace engineering class. And I remember we did something called an endurance course, which is a 6-mile run with obstacles, right? And you're in boots. And, yeah. So you're in cami, we call it boots and utes, utilities. Like, so you're in pants basically and boots, and you're running 6 miles over obstacles, So you run it, but you run it for time. And so I remember I ran it alongside him, but he was doing a different training program where he ran it and then he ran back to, and then he essentially ran it backwards. So he ran 6 miles and then ran 6 miles back, and they took the slower of his 2 times. Wow. And that's what they do. Both of his times were faster on average than my single time, right? Later that day, we went into and we took a fundamentals of aerodynamics test, which was incredibly hard. Later found out he scored 100% on it. He got nothing wrong, right? And he was a super nice guy. So I saw all those people. I was like, man, reevaluate the world. The world I grew up in is not the real world. There are all kinds of different people, and they were people from all backgrounds. And so I went from that, and then 9/11 happened, and then joined the Marine Corps. I'm going to speed up a 20-year journey for sake of time.
That's all right.
And so joined the Marine Corps. And while I was in the Marine Corps, actually when I was in Afghanistan, I was on an armed patrol, basically, like an armored patrol. And in the right between the radio mount and the seat, I found this little purple book called Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? And so I read, so I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I mean, that's where it started. So that's the long answer to your question of how did you get started in understanding how to break that cycle of poverty and how to build financial. It was Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? And if anybody's listening to this hasn't read it, it's a super fast read. You can read it in a few hours, and it changed my mindset forever because it convinced me that even though I grew up poor, and even though I didn't have any of the natural sort of advantages of like maybe someone who was born with wealthy family or whatever, that that anything was possible. And anything was, but more specifically, it was possible in a way that was accessible to me by buying real estate and by building financial freedom through real estate. So that's where the idea started. Was in Afghanistan, actually.
Interesting. I like that, man, because it's not your normal way of getting it, and it's kind of this cool thing. And so you kind of build this thing out. How long after was it kind of like you got the traction moving to the place you felt like I've actually kind of arrived? Because I know it's hard to say that you have that moment, but there's got to be something where you go like, gosh, like I've done this. Because I always know that people hear this and go, gosh, it sounds good, but it's going to take me 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Like I wonder like how long it took. And then from there, like kind of what was the direction of like helping others with it too? Because that's not what everybody else does, right? Some people go like, I'm good. And they sit back and they just kind of enjoy it. Yeah. But now you go into the world and help others with it.
Yeah, I learned something from Tony Robbins a while back that has changed really the way that I look at everything. And I will never be I'm good, I can sit on a beach or whatever. He said, you can only make so much money, then you have to start making a difference for your life to have meaning. You can only make so much money before it starts completely losing all of its power to affect your happiness. And all of a sudden,
I agree.
You have this big gaping hole and you're like, wow, I'm a millionaire. Why am I sad? Why am I depressed? It's because you're not providing value to people, right? But if you can create a life and a business where you get compensated by making other people's lives better and providing value and helping them live their dreams, then you get that spiritual fulfillment as well, which is what he's talking about with your life making a difference, right? So I learned that, but I tell you, I tend to, when I try something new, fail horribly at first. That's been kind of the routine, I guess, through my life. So the first piece of real estate investment I bought a property. I was going to flip it. And I bought it in June of 2007 and started renovating it over the rest of 2007 and 2008. And for those of you who don't understand the implications of this, the greatest crash in housing in America since the 1920s happened from 2007 to 2008 and into 2009.
Yeah,
right.
So I was around. We bought a house in 06, and then it was right out of the NFL. Like my aunt sold me the house, and my aunt's kind of a crappy human. I found that years later. But we bought it. It was like interest only. Get this great, and then all of a sudden we were under like $500,000 on this house. So I remember
that happened to millions and millions of Americans, and it happened to me as well. But the difference was that I only had $30,000 in my whole life. I had just spent a 9-month tour in Afghanistan, and I'd saved up a bunch of money. But that's all the money that we had. And so I bought this house and poured the whole $30,000 into it, did all the renovations myself. And then after we got it appraised 2 years later, it was worth half of what I paid for it unrenovated. So like I started out, Tony, with a negative net worth. Like that was my journey, right? A massive blow to the face right from the very beginning. So like you have so many people who started investing or started businesses in 2000. And by 2005, 2006, they were writing books because everything they touched turned to gold. It was like, this is easy. Wow. I buy a house, do nothing. I knew a guy once who bought a house, literally listed it the next month, did nothing to it, and made 60 grand on it. Just boom. Right? Because the market was so crazy. That wasn't the case with me.
I get it. Yeah, not at all.
No, it was, I tell you.
What are the lessons you learned from them? Like, what did you extract? Because, I mean, you got to be in this place where obviously a lot of people go like, I'm done with this and kind of tuck away. But having been through situations you were in life, what were you able to extract from that? Like, what was your working pattern of thought in those moments?
Yeah. So what I ended up doing, what I ended up being is I benefited from the help of another human But what I will tell you is that I learned something that I still use to this day. In fact, it's the primary method that I use to when I engage in new things. The real story is that, I had a realtor friend of mine named Larry who said, "Hey, I know that your house has dropped 50% in value, but look around. Every house has dropped 50% in value, but it's a military town. Wars in Iraq and Afghanistan are raging right now, which means they're plussing up troop strength, which means they're putting more money
Yeah.
into the military. More money means your BAH, your allowance for housing that you get, has gone way up, which means in a military town, what do you think the correlation is between rent and allowance for housing? More allowance for housing you have, the higher rent you can pay. And so what happens is in this military town, you had its property values had lost 50%, but the rents had actually gone up.
Yeah.
Right?
Makes sense.
So you could pick up on anywhere. You could pick up houses for $60,000, $70,000 that were renting for $900 a month. Right? And so you do quick math on that. And those are high cash flow properties, right? You put $15,000 down on a property and you're maybe cash flowing $400 or $500. Right? That's, you do the math on that. That's like a 40% plus cash on cash return. That's a really big, right? So all you have to do when you run those numbers is if 60 grand is not sexy to you, then add a zero. Can you buy, right? If you could buy a $600,000 house and rent it for $9,000 a month, same concept, right? So we learned from Larry, right? I don't want to be like, oh, I sat there in a Zen pose and it came to me in a dream of light. No, Larry said, hey, you should probably go buy a rental property. But what I learned later, and now this is what I approach every single thing. Every time I go into an engagement of any type, I only have two options that I allow myself. I either win, meaning I accomplish the goal that I've set out, or I find the lesson. I either win or I learn, right? And so the more, I guess, evolved answer to your question is, in that situation, I had made a mistake, and the mistake was born out of me not knowing what a market was, not having education, right? If I had done 30 seconds of cash flow analysis, I would have said, $152,000 house that rents for $900 is not going to cash flow. So regardless of the market, I'm not buying this house. Right? But I didn't know any of that. I didn't know the education. And so the lesson that I really took from it is I need to educate myself. And that's what I did over the next 6-7 years. But that's
beautiful. Yeah. It's how to explain it. They call it the school of hard knocks. For it's a school of life. And I think a lot of people, they fail to allow themselves to get in that position because that'll teach you much more than information. Because I can imagine that the days of like, because we've had this with our house and all stuff, like you just had like this cold feeling and like this ball like in the pit of your stomach. And that teaches you so much. It forces you to figure it out. Like I got served with eviction papers when I had opened this gym after the NFL. I had my degree in kinesiology, and a guy rolls up after 9 months with an eviction notice from the landlord. And I didn't have enough money to pay the rent that I had to back pay for the last 3 months. I wasn't making any money. That was right around 2008, in fact. It was still around the bottom of a recession kind of coming out. Dude, those nights, to this day, I can still feel them. But those are why I'm great. And you need those times. In fact,
I absolutely do. There's a, I was talking to a friend of mine, Justin, who was in the Air Force, his Special Forces branch of the Air Force, and he was saying that, when you look at, and I would probably apply this at least to certain positions in the NFL as well. When you look at Special Forces, the people who succeed have one character trait or one aspect of their story that is common. It doesn't matter, like with Special Forces, it doesn't matter what state they came from, what race they are, what socioeconomic background they came from, or even like if they were born in America, right? A lot of times they're American citizens that weren't born in. None of that stuff matters by and large for success. What matters is an adversity-filled background. That's the common thread for successful people like Goggins, for instance, who have success in these intense environments. It's adversity-filled background. Isn't that interesting? Malcolm Gladwell talks about this, right? About how what a gift oftentimes adversity is, right?
Hell yeah. I got this paint on my wall right now, and it's right here. I got a tattoo on my arm. It's a ship. It's just like, a big, sailboat. And it says on this painting over here, smooth seas never made skilled sailors.
Yeah.
And for me, I endured a lot as a kid. Before 6 years old, I was getting beaten and starved and tortured and like all these crazy things as a kid. And I absolutely hate that they happen, but I deeply appreciate that they happen because of that experience, there is very little I've faced in my life that I'm
Right.
like, I can't do this because I'm like, I survived that. And I don't even, you know, it's not even a
Right.
logical thing. I don't have to talk to myself about it. My brain, my body, I just know at an
Yeah.
instinctual level. So it's interesting that you said that because I do get that. But what about someone who doesn't have that? Are they doomed to not have the
That's a
ability to get great?
tremendous, tremendous question. And it's one that weighs heavily on me because, and maybe I can learn from you because my kids are basically 4 and 6 and they're growing up
Yeah.
in a wealthy family in Southern California, right? They're growing up as far away
Mhm.
from how I did as possible. And
Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
to hit on your point of you being able to face today's challenges because of what you were in and because it's not as bad as that. I have something that this is unique to military, ideally because they're the only ones that deploy to combat. Maybe police officers, I guess, could relate to this, but nobody's shooting at me,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
right, like I've been in combat, I've been shot at before, and it's in that moment you're like, I would love to get out of this alive, right? Like I'm not looking for
Mhm.
food, I'm not looking for money, I'm not looking for love, I'm really looking for survival, right? Accomplish the
Yeah.
mission,
Yeah.
but I'd really love to survive. And so
Yeah.
right now I'm going through something in business that is like I got to make a very significant decision, and I don't know the right answer. And sometimes I'll get up in the morning or at night, and I'll be worrying, anxiety, whatever, and then my brain shifts and it says, well, but okay, how big of a problem is it really, right? Let's say I lose a
Yeah.
million
Yeah.
bucks. How big of a problem is it
Mhm.
compared to being shot at? Right?
So,
Right?
yeah.
Ask your average millionaire, right? It's like, give me $1 million or you get shot at and could get killed. And it's like, it's an E, right?
Yeah.
So for people that don't have that, like my children and presumably like your children, and this is where I'll just maybe ask you the question. I want
Mhm.
to help them grow into good humans that are resilient and
Yeah.
that, right? They call Southern California the bubble, right? Because and you
Yeah.
know it, right? You live up there, you live in the bubble too.
Mhm.
So, but life is mostly outside the bubble, and life is wildly
Mhm.
unfair, and injustice is everywhere. And, you know, I guess my question would be, how do I help Austin and Alana understand what the real world is like, be equipped to deal with the real world, um,
Yeah.
without, you know,
All the craziness you
right?
had as a kid growing up. Yeah, man, that is the dance. I was just in a meeting before this one having a conversation because I have kids. My oldest is in college. They're very privileged. They have never had anything they wanted. In fact, with the last couple of years for Christmas, we have been trying to tell our family, please do
Mm-hmm,
not buy them presents
mm-hmm,
for Christmas. They need nothing, and I want them just to enjoy Christmas. Our family won't do it. So we're not that we are mad at the family. We're going to take a cruise during Christmas, just that we're like,
mm-hmm.
hey kids, this Christmas, we're just going to love the people that are around us.
That's so
That's
good.
all we need. But here's the thing, though. My son, this is a perfect lineup. I played football as a kid. I wasn't very good, but I was ridiculously hungry to be great. I had this intense desire because that's all I had. I struggled everywhere else. This is the one place I could go and try to find and create something, but I had so much hardship at home. Like I was adopted into a family. We were very poor growing up, same as you're talking about. We were the family that we would go to Goodwill to get the
Mm-hmm,
donations that they didn't
mm-hmm,
want to put on the racks. That's what we were. It was this weird dynamic of life. And so I look at my kids and I go, gosh, I want you to have the same drive because my youngest son, he ain't got that
mm-hmm,
dog in him. Like he ain't got it. And I know,
mm-hmm,
and he knows. And people ask, man, how do you get him to have it? And I go, well, there's just one of two ways. I go, one, I can hope he gets it. I can
mm-hmm,
just hope he gets it, right? Or I can be mad at him because he doesn't have it. But knowing, my heart knows he hasn't had to endure
mm-hmm,
what I had to endure. Therefore, he doesn't have that same dog. Kind of like how Mike Tyson, one day his son goes, hey, dad, I want to box. He
mm-hmm,
goes, no, no, no. Because, son, you're going to get in the ring with guys like me,
mm-hmm,
and you ain't ready for that. You
mm-hmm,
didn't have a life like I had, right? And the other part of it, I go, well, what if I create difficulty? Because I believe one of the biggest issues, I don't care what walk of life, there's always a relative
right.
level of difficulty. But a lot of parents rob their kids of hardship.
Absolutely.
Things get hard, something going on, and they hop in and they do it for the kid. And I go, well, how's your kid ever going to learn how to swing a bat if you keep taking the bat away, right? And you swing on your own. Because well, they got to hit a home run. I'm going to do it for them. No, they got to do it. So these little notes. So what I do, and it's kind of not fun, I intentionally create moments that my kids hate. And so I was just having this conversation before this call. I had this conversation with my son just yesterday because he's in this pocket where I'm like, bro, I show up every day and I'm your coach for your tackle football team. We do a morning routine every morning. I spend 45 minutes every day with you for a year and a half doing cold plunges, hikes, prayer, meditation. I train him and his buddies in the off season 3 times a week, 2 hours a day. And I go, we dive in, but you're not giving me your all. And I know because on one game you balled out, and it wasn't because of anything more than you had buddies in that team. You wanted to show out for them. So I know you're robbing me of something, and I got to figure it out. So I get to the whole statement and come to this point, and I go, I said, son, this yesterday, I said, I can do one of two things. One, I can step back and give up on you and just take the pressure off, and I can let you figure it out on your own. I said, but you have not shown you have the ability to do that. I'd love to be able to let the reins off and you can handle it, but you and I know you don't got that. So I said, if you can't figure it out from the effort, I just have to go harder. I have to be a tyrant, and I don't want to be, but I'll tell you this. Every man that has made me better, I hated in the moment. I mean, I hated him. So I said, you're probably going to hate me for a little bit, but I promise if you can step back in the moments where I'm doing stuff like I have this idea. I was saying about the property was like this top of the hill area, and we got this area has a bunch of rocks, and we got these buckets, and I'm going to make him fill up like a gallon bucket with a rock, one by one, up and down the hill, one rock at a time. And now people go like, that's torture. It's not. But I need him to understand that whatever that thing is, he needs to have some connection to it, an emotional feel of like how difficult and crappy that was. Because what happens is, like you said, it's an adversity. I'm not putting you in a dangerous position. There's no bullets flying at you. But I need to have things that are almost illogically uncomfortable to make him do, so he connects to a reason why that thing should be met and this should be done. And so like for football, it's like, I don't care about you being great at football. It's weird. Like I don't care about him being the all-star. None of it matters. I just want your best effort. And I know what your best effort looks like. And if you don't want to give that to me and you want to show up here, we're going to find a way to get it out of you. So when you're asking, like, how do I do it for my kids? I literally concoct situations to make their life difficult. Because if I don't do that, when life shows up and gives them difficulty, they will shut down.
100% agree with that. And I think that's amazing. I also know that now I'm not as crazy, or I don't think any of us are as crazy as Goggins. I honestly believe he probably takes it a bit too far. But there's a lot to be learned from the fact that your mind and your body, like your body has so much more to offer than your brain thinks it does, because your brain has never experienced it. So as soon as you experience that, and you only experience that on the other side of extreme hardship and pain, then you realize a wellspring of power that your body has naturally, right? And the other times you realize that is in extreme situations, like in a car wreck where it's about to explode, or in a combat situation or something like that. You don't even think about it. Your brain just unlocks reserves of superhuman capability. There are millions of examples of this. This is not news, right? That's there. That's still there, right? So, you only get to it through adversity, though. So,
And I think it's kind of the point of it too, is like, here's one that I went to a speech one time. I was talking about this in the middle of it going on, and someone goes, I'm going to walk away before I hear about any more child abuse. And I go, whatever. So my son this is last year. It was last year's football season. I wasn't a coach, but I could go in the field and I can see when he's giving his all and he's not, because no, it's your son. I know what he looks like. And so I go, like, I don't know if you're worried or what's going on. I said, I need you to go full out. Like, I need to see you not jogging around. I need to see you full speed sprinting. Your body language will tell me. And so he had a game and he didn't do it. And I go, look, it's like the third or fourth week of doing this. I go, if you don't figure it out this week in this game, you're going to sleep on the floor for a month. Now, I'll give you a mat. I gave him a little 1-inch mat, but you have no bed. I'm taking your mattress out of your room. You're going to sleep on the floor. And I told him, and he goes, oh, okay. Like, and I said, I'm giving you got this week. And so the week leading up, I kept reminding him. I was like, I'm not playing. And sure enough, the game came, didn't do it. And so I took his mattress out and he was on the floor. The first week, my wife was like, it's been a week. And I go, I know it's been a week. Second week, she's like, honey, this is too much, honey. I go, no, it's not. The third week, she's like, this has got to stop. Like, she was battling me. Here's the thing. A man without a consequence that he understands is going to be difficult, he's not going to become a great man. He needs to have some kind of pinpoint look back and go, I got to do it, because if not, this situation is worse than that situation. Because here was the thing, like you're talking about, when you get to that moment and like you got to bring something out of you, I need to believe that if I don't do this, it's going to be worse. And that's what I needed him to have. And I go, I said, wife, love, ma. I said, he has to realize that he has to choose his uncomfortable. He can't choose whether to be uncomfortable, but which one. He can have the discomfort of going to practice and running his butt off and doing his job, or the discomfort of coming home and not having a good bed to sleep on. But if it's in his head it's going to be easier to be at home in his comfy bed. He's not going to do what he has to
Mm-hmm.
do out in the football field. And so sure enough, all of a sudden the kid
Mm-hmm.
came on. Oh, like
Mm-hmm.
magic, right? But after that, and then he consistently held. Now this year, he's
Mm-hmm.
kind of been hot or cold, back and forth. And so I haven't really dove back into that level with him. But we're about to hit another stretch here because he has some things he has to get done because he's about to go to high school. And I'm like, you got to figure
Yeah.
yourself out. But that's the idea is like I think you're saying there is a level at which when you're subject to that moment of intensity, I have to
Yeah.
turn on. And you have to put people in those positions to get the opportunity to be forced to do it.
I love that story so much. And the reason I love it is because I can relate like crazy to the wife just being such a loving person and not really understanding, that like she just wants to love. My wife just wants to love. And also we couldn't, they told her she couldn't have kids. And so that's a long story, but we battled for a long time to be able to have children. And it was a miracle. And our first baby, Alana, was a miracle baby. And she also came out with some pretty significant health issues for a while that had us really scared. But now she's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but Kimberly, my wife, when she set up her room, she set it up lovingly and just filled it with stuff. I mean, so much stuff, like stuffed animals and dresses and books and all this stuff. And Alana, naturally, she just eventually became completely and utterly entitled and started becoming disrespectful to Kimberly. Kimberly would go out of her way to make her something really amazing, and Alana would be like, yeah, whatever. And it hurt Kimberly's feelings. And I saw her crying, and I was like, I told Alana, I was like, we are not entitled in this family. We will never be. I will tell you something that will never happen in the Rushing family is entitlement, because you are not entitled to anything. I love what Shaq said whenever his daughter asked him, Daddy, are we rich? He goes, you're not. I am. I was like, how brilliant, because it strips away entitlement, right? And it doesn't mean that you don't give them things that you couldn't have, but it does mean that you make sure that they're grateful for it and that they work for it. And so I told Alana, I said, if you're ever disrespectful, and I tell her, my wife, I don't say your mother, because I want to show that unity between me and the woman that God put me together with. And, I said, if you ever disrespect my wife like that again, I'm going to take everything in this room out except the bed. And she, of course, the next day was, entitled and disrespectful. And so I sat her down and I said, baby, I want you to understand something. I love you. And this is why, because I want to teach you the superpower of gratitude. I'm giving you a superpower.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to take all this stuff. And it took 45 minutes to take things out and put it in the garage. And she was crying the whole time. And Kimberly in the other room was like crying as well. And it was just me. It was me embattled, right? And I was like, and my heart was breaking as well, like, because she's such a cute, sweet little girl. But I did it. And I said, okay, baby. And I was telling her I loved her every single time. This is why I'm doing this. I love you. And I'm giving you the superpower of gratitude, right? And you can earn this stuff back. Just be grateful. And so literally the next day, so sweet, best behavior, respectful, Long story short, over the course of the next week or so, she earned a few things back, but she realized the big thing was most of the stuff in her room she didn't need. And she'll tell you, and now her room is significantly different. And Kimberly, my wife, it's one of the things I'm most proud of. She says, this absolutely worked. It worked 100%. In the moment, it was like, right? So, but it's why you're doing it. It's not what you're doing ultimately, right? It's like, and whoever, the person who said, oh, I'm going to leave before, they don't understand what discipline looks like. If they're thinking that's child abuse, then they need to understand how discipline shapes a man, how it shapes the person. And guess what? I've slept on the ground. I've slept on the ground many times. Guess what? As a Marine, how many times you sleep on the ground? So if he decides to choose right? So like, it's not the end of the world, right? It's, come on, right?
I agree. And the thing, I had a video I did recently, and I said something like about the idea of the fact that if you don't discipline your kids, the world will discipline them more difficultly when they become an adult. And it's way different, because if my son isn't afraid of the disciplinary actions or disciplinary outcomes of his actions, he doesn't enter your world and has problems in your. That's why we have these kids running around in the Bay Area now robbing these stores, because they're not afraid of discipline, because there was none growing up in the household. So for me, I go, discipline isn't beating a kid. It's just having a consequence if they break the rule. That's all it is. And we as humans, we need that for a society to run and for us to be good humans. So, yeah, man, I wish people would get this at a broad scale, but it's not always the case. And I just realized we have got to the back end of our time. I just had an enjoyable, amazing conversation about just life and the good flow. And so, man, we got a couple questions. One, I want to figure out, What are the exciting things that you do and that you want the world to know you do?
Yeah, everything that we do is centered around the mission of helping military and veterans build financial freedom. But like we've been doing this now for about 6 years, and we've got a group of about 600 core, normal military people. Right? These are not people that came in as wealthy individuals, but we have helped many of them build financial freedom, and seeing what they do in their lives when they have that financial freedom is amazing. And it's like we have like 33 people who've become millionaires, like normal people who've become millionaires by investing in real estate and building businesses and stuff. And that's life-changing stuff. Like you look at a cross-section of the military, it's normally not from the manor-born people, right? It's normally people like you and me and your brother and, so on. And so, so seeing people like that. And then we've launched this movement called Veterans for Financial Freedom, which is a free community where we help teach people how to use their VA loan and how to house hack and live for free, or how to optimize their VA benefits or pay off debt or create, income streams, right? Because it doesn't matter. You don't need money to build financial freedom. You just need to have the knowledge. You need a network you can plug in, and you need to take action. That's it. Like in today's gig economy information age, you don't need a ton of cash to like build financial freedom. And so we teach people that, and what I'm most proud of is that this has become a movement, and it's much bigger than me now, and much bigger than my wife.
Yeah.
And our goal is to impact, generations of service members and their family. Actually, you would technically qualify for the community since your brother served. So it's like USAA, right? So because family members are such an incredibly important part of a service member's journey. That's the whole reason USA decided to do it that way, and we decided to follow suit. So, yeah.
I didn't even know that. Yeah, he's still in. He actually retired, I think, 2 years. Just got back from Germany. Yeah, I had no idea. He may be a good person to talk to about this too, because he's about to leave. He's like, I'm just going to go on contract and become a civilian.
Yeah, we all do. Get a baseball hat.
Exactly. Man, that's awesome. I love that. And then we have final two questions. One other question. It's great things you talked about. Where do I send people to get more details?
Probably the easiest place is to send them to my socials. Buddy Rushing. You can just find me on Instagram. My name's Edward Buddy Rushing. So if you type any manner of that, my company's called White Feather Investments. So you could go to whitefeatherinvestments.com or find me on any of the socials. I mean, those are ways that you can connect with me. You can see I make all kinds of posts about what we're doing and everything like that. But yeah,
love it. Final question. I heard you say a little bit about this earlier, but I didn't go too deep into it. But I figured we'd get to this question. It's always the same question. What promise did God make to the world when he created you?
Wow. I love these questions. They're thought-provoking. Promise did God make to the world when he created me? I believe that he promised the world that in the time that I was on this planet, I would do everything that I could to make my corner of the world a little bit more like heaven in the time that I was here, right? So that's not just a flowery statement. I actually mean that. I learned that from the pastor of my church, a guy named Jason, and he said, I believe that one of our biggest mandates on this earth is to make it do everything we can with the talents, with the treasures, with the time, to make it a little bit more like heaven. And there's a lot of manifestations of that. And so for mine, our mission, right? It's not just about financial freedom. It's not just about any of that. Mm-hmm. It's about creating a wave of people that, let me ask you this question. If you have somebody that raises their hand and volunteers to serve their fellow American, right? And potentially sacrifice their life to do that, what do you think that person will elect to do with their time if they build financial freedom? Will they go sit on a beach? They will give back. They'll give back. They will give back. And that's the whole thesis. And so we're seeing that play out with hundreds and hundreds of people right now. And they're just looking for ways to add value. And I believe that the combined collective effort of all of us doing that will help our nation become a little bit more like heaven.
I agree, man. I think a lot of that needs to be done because most people are looking out for themselves.
That's right.
So it's a very good promise to the world, my friend. I appreciate that. I've thoroughly enjoyed having our conversation. So much so time just slid by and I didn't even notice it. It was just a good time. And those of you guys tuned in, hanging out with us, thank you for being here. I cut you off.
No, I was just saying I have a call. I have a call after this. So I'm like, I got to jump.
Yeah. You got to hop. Yeah. So Thank you guys for hanging out with us. If you guys get a chance, go to check out his stuff, Buddy Rushing. Outside of that, as always, make the most of your off shift moments so you can make shift happen in your life. It's Anthony Trucks and Edward Buddy Rushing signing off. Hey, thank you for tuning into the Shift podcast. I pray that we gave something amazing to your life. And if you found this episode served you in some way, I would love if you could share it with people you know, people you love, as well as your community, because you never know who needs that simple little seed that can grow into something amazing for their life. And the actual training doesn't stop here. If you want your free copy of the show notes sent to you after every episode so you can get the major points consolidated down, simply go to textanthony.com and message the word notes. Till next time, make shift happen.